Welcome, listeners. This is Captain Dave Jackson coming to you. This is COLLABCAST by IAOA, and I have with me our guest on the relaunch of COLLABCAST, Mr. Steve Holley with Holley Insurance from the good state of Virginia. Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Hope you are, Dave.
Awesome, thanks. Yes, I am. It's a beautiful day here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Loving it, Nashville area. So loving life for sure. So I wanted to bring you on, Steve, because you were, most of our listeners are IAOA members. And if you don't know what IAOA is, it stands for Insurance Agency Owners Alliance. And I met Steve virtually when I started that group. It's a Facebook group, IAOA. And I just looked it up today. Steve, you joined the group on the exact day that I created it, January 29th, 2014. Did you know that?
I did not know the date. I knew that I was the first one, but I didn't
Yep.
know I didn't know exactly how long ago it was. So
Right.
that's awesome.
So Steve's always been touted as our number one member to join the group. I think I added like 5 that day because the story goes, I think you've heard it a million times. I basically transitioned from the captive world over to independent, and it had success as a State Farm agent with a neighborhood Facebook group. And so Steve and I were in a group. This is the way I remember it. You tell me if you remember it different.
All right.
Steve and I were in a different group, and it was mostly all state agents all around the country. And they were passed along, move out of state leads. And somebody invited me and said, you'll get a bunch of leads out of this group. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I joined. Steve was in there as a member. So we probably went back and forth once or twice. I don't remember that part. But it really wasn't built for us. It was mostly for the Allstate folks, and that's
Right.
fine. But that's what made it dawn on me. Hey, there should be a group like this for independent agents like you and I. And the only criteria I wanted to set was that you must be an owner of your agency. And so I created, it takes all of 50 seconds to create a Facebook group. All you need is click, 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 and an image, and you're good to go. And so I said, Steve, hey, you want to join this group of mine? I'm starting a new one. It's going to be for independent agents only. We'll leave the Allstaters behind, and boom, the rest is history. Is that how you remember it?
That's exactly right. I remember it was you. Jennifer Clages was in there as well,
Yep.
and I think she was the number two member right
She was
behind
in
me.
Arizona with me. I lived in Arizona at the time. Yep.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's exactly how I remember it, and it seemed like everybody was passing leads and that sort of thing in that group, but it was mostly all state people,
Yep.
and I don't know whatever happened with that group, but man, IAOA sure took off.
Yeah, we left that group behind. So today, we IAOA, when I say we, IAOA stands at 8,917 members. So at the
Wow.
end of the month, we'll hit 9,000 members in 9 years. So we're 9 years old just a couple of months ago. So yeah.
Do
So
you
Steve,
remember? Do you
go
remember
ahead.
worrying that we had too many members at like 100, and then do we have too many members at 250, and
Yeah, I
do we
know.
have too many at 500 and all that kind of stuff?
I know. At first, well, the reason why the group started because got started at all is because I knew you and like 5 other folks. I knew Jennifer. I knew like 3, 4 other independent agents in this who are owners in the state of Arizona. That was it. And I knew
Right.
you from this other group. So that's how the group got started. And at first, we had 5 members for a while.
Right.
And I'm like, this isn't working, guys. So, I mean, honestly, I've told this story, if not 1,000 times, probably 10. Uh, I started the group selfishly to get my own questions answered because I moved from captive to independent. And so that's why I wanted to get my questions answered from my peers. Sure, I could call a carrier rep, and get a question answered, or I could call an underwriter or whatever. But I didn't want that. I wanted to get my questions and advice from folks doing it on the front lines, just like me. And I was a scratch agency owner. So I had this is my 4th agency at this point. I had 3 different captive agencies, 2 Allstates and a State Farm. State Farm just prior. I stayed in the same office, went State Farm to Independent, the exact same strip mall office, which you've been to even.
Yeah.
So that's how we kind of got to know each other virtually. And then eventually Steve came to our first conference of IOA that we held. What was the first year you came to conference?
I missed the one in California. That's the only one that I missed. So that was the one where there was
So,
like, 20 people. And I remember the messages going back and forth from that. My daughter had a volleyball tournament that we were traveling for. That's the only reason I didn't make that one, but
yep,
I've been to
yep.
every other one.
So the first one really wasn't even what we called a conference. It was a business meeting on a Saturday.
Right.
27 folks came. Most of them are from the west of the Mississippi. James Brown came from Texas. He was the furthest away. And then Brandon Smith was the one who suggested it. He was from Montana. Most were from California, Arizona. Most of them drove, didn't even fly in. And so 27 people showed up. And that was it. Next year we had a conference, San Antonio. We called it a conference and we
Right.
started to act like a conference and off we went. Now we hold big events with several hundred people, over 1,000 people, and an exhibit hall with 120 exhibitors and speakers, from every walk of life in the insurance industry, but also IOA members. So you've been to not every conference though, right?
Oh yeah, I've
San
made every one
Antonio?
from San Antonio on. I've made it.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, you've hit every single conference then. Kudos to
Yeah.
you, man. That's an amazing accomplishment.
And I'll see you in
So,
Chicago. I'll be there.
Chicago this fall in October. Awesome. So, let's go. This isn't all about IOA. I want to talk about you. So, that's the main thing. So, tell me about, let's start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Go to school? All that. Hit us with that.
So I live in Southwest Virginia, born, raised. That's where I am still. So I live in a town called Rocky Mount, Virginia. Sits between Martinsville. If you know anything about racing, the Martinsville Speedway is just south of us, and Roanoke, Virginia is the big city north of us. And great area. Love the people here. It's been a really good place to do business, really good place to have a family and that sort of thing. So it's home for me.
Cool. Wife Tara, and how many kids?
We have two adult children, Greg
Out of the
and
house?
Julia. Yes, out of the
Out of
house.
the house. So you're an empty nester.
That's right.
How's that feel?
It's funny when we were approaching it, all of our friends are like, "What are you going to do when your kids leave the house?" And our answer is, whatever the hell we want to. So that's kind of what we've done at this point.
Exactly.
The kids are close enough by that we can visit them, and actually we dog sat for our son this past weekend, and all that. They're both a few hours away, but we can drive if we ever want to see them, and it's kind of led to actually, you and IAOA and several other folks out there have sort of helped us grow a love for Arizona from where you
Yep.
used to come to us from sunny Gilbert, Arizona.
Right.
And so we're heading back out there for a couple of weeks here at the end of this week. So we like to travel and do some things now that the kids are out of the house. But it's been fine for all the folks that are approaching it. It's not that bad. You'll be fine.
Right. Right. So both kids are single.
Son is engaged. He will be married in June. Daughter's still in school and single.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
then neither of them are following in the insurance business, right?
No, no. My son is a drug dealer, pharmacist, so legal,
Legal
and
drug
my
dealer. I like it.
and my daughter is going to be getting her master's in psychology. So, yeah, neither one of
Good for
them.
them.
Although psychology could work in the insurance business, but she has moved to Northern Virginia, and I think she enjoys it there.
Um, That's very cool. Neither of my kids followed insurance either. I have an
Yeah,
engineer and a doctor, so
yeah,
I had no complaints there. So,
right.
did you go to college?
I did. I attended Ferrum College, which is local here,
Spell that,
but
will you? Ferrum?
Ferrum.
Never
Our
heard of it.
most famous alum is probably a pitcher by the name of Billy Wagner, not the Billy Wagner in
Okay.
IAOA, but
Okay.
the other one.
Yep.
Probably most famous alum. I attended Ferrum. I did not graduate. I always tell people I graduated from the School of Hard Knocks, but attended Ferrum College.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Billy Wagner, didn't he play for the Phillies?
He played for several teams, mostly the Houston Astros. He did pitch for the Phillies
That's
for a
right.
while, pitched
Yeah,
for the Mets as well.
yeah. Okay. He's
Yeah.
your most famous alumni other than you.
But yeah, he's second, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So went to college, and then on LinkedIn, you actually disclose that you work for State Farm. How'd that
I
work?
did. I worked for a State Farm agent initially, so I started out in the business in life and health, doing mostly like senior stuff, Medicare supplement, long-term care, all that. So I wasn't doing any P&C when I first got in. Went to work for let's see, first it was New York Life, still doing life and health, and then ended up working for a State Farm agent in our area. And that's really where I learned the P&C business. I still have a tremendous amount of respect for State Farm. It was a great place to learn the business. And even though I don't like the captive model, and I'm glad that I got away from it, it was really a good place for me to start. So I worked for that agent for a while. Then the company itself hired me on. They had an agent that retired rather suddenly, and they needed somebody to run that office until they could, ramp up and get an agent in there.
Uh,
So they asked me to come and do that, and I did. And at the end of that, I had to kind of make a decision of whether I was going to go into their agent program or if I wanted to start my own. Of course, you've heard me say how much I love where I am and that sort of thing. Going into their agent program would have required me to move. My wife and I just built a house. Our son had just recently been born, and I said, "Nah, I think I'm going to go at this a different way." And
okay.
at that time, I think I started the agency when I was 24 years old, and so I guess, I didn't know what I didn't know at that time, and it was me against the world, and I said, "Hey, I can make this work. I don't need State Farm or anybody else really, and ended up finding some good independent carrier partners that helped me get started and that sort of thing. So it was, sort of I think the best business decision I've made is to do that
For
pretty early
sure.
on.
So your entrepreneurial spirit kicked in and said, I need to be independent.
Right.
Cool. So who was your first carrier you got an appointment with?
Erie Insurance was how we started. They were
So
great for
explain to our
me.
listeners, how does a scratch agent get an Erie appointment? Because Erie appointments are considered pretty elusive.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually
So
a
how do you
pretty
do
long
that?
process. I think it took me somewhere around 8 months to go all the way through the process with them. I told them what my plan was. They had an agent that had retired. Actually, he didn't retire; he passed away. Um, and in the area that I lived in, and they wanted another agent there. They liked my State Farm experience. That was one of the things that kind of helped me along with them. But it's the same thing as most places. I had to give them a whole lot of information, but beyond that was like business plan. All these kinds of
Of course.
things. At the time, we had built a house. We were broke basically at the time. We had no extra money to start anything.
Yeah, we all
Um,
are
th-
when we first start out.
yeah, they even went in and gave me a loan to kind of get started to get the business up and going and all that. So they were a great partner for me in the beginning, and then as we kind of proved it with them, there's always the carriers that every agency can get just by picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, I'd like an appointment," and we got some of those. But then throughout the years we were able to pick up a few other quality carriers that have been really good partners for us too.
Okay. So in Holley Insurance, who would you rank your top five carriers?
It's definitely Erie is number one still to this day.
I expected that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most of our business goes through them. Travelers, Grange, we do have a pretty extensive progressive book as well. We just took on Nationwide, so we'll see how that one goes. That's kind of a new one for us, and I do like the way that they sort of exited the captive side and going into the indie part. And then we've got some more like regional and even one carrier that is just a Virginia Mutual type company that we represent as well.
Right. Right. So in your agency, what's your mix of business, personal to commercial, life, health, benefits?
Well, we don't do a whole lot of life and health or benefits at all. We're about
Okay.
75% personal lines and 25% commercial.
Okay.
Um, it used to not be quite as heavy. It used to be about 60/40, and we bought an agency within the last few years that was nearly 100% personal lines. So that kind of skewed the numbers a little bit for us.
Gotcha. So other than that one acquisition recently, uh, mostly organic growth or other acquisitions?
Yeah, it's been a mix of both. We've done, I actually did my first acquisition a year, a little bit more than a year and a half into the business. And that was a really small book, but it was big enough to allow me to, the cash flow was enough to allow me to hire my first employee. So that one worked out really well. It was an Erie
Yeah.
book too, so that worked out for me real well. And I've done one other between. So I've done three total in the years
Okay.
that I've been here.
Three acquisitions total.
Yeah.
Do you even realize how lucky you are to that you said that acquisition bankrolled your first employee? There are so many agents that I talk to, independent agency owners, who are one man shows starting out from scratch, like a lot of us do, and they just can't get to the part in their first year, end of the first year, year and a half, 2 years even, where they need to they know they need to hire. And when you get to that point, renewals start coming in. I
Right.
have to hire. I just have to. But the bank account just doesn't look that strong, and it's a tough transition for so many to be able to pull the trigger and say, I got to at least hire part time,
Right.
right? And get somebody on board to help me with this because I can't do it all.
Right.
And so that's a real turning point. There's a lot of turning points in most agencies' lives, but that's one of them. So you are very fortunate to be able to have that financial bankroll to be able to help you get that beyond that first hurdle because that's a big hurdle that a lot of folks just can't get over too well. And that's a big reason why a lot of small agencies starting out don't get past the first year or two
Right.
because they just can't get to the hiring stage. And of course, once you do, you know, the everybody gives advice that you should always stay ahead of hiring, hire before you need to and all those kind of advice. And sure, it sounds good, but when you're writing the checks and you got to put bread and milk on the table for
Yep.
kids at home with a new house and all the rest, it's a tough decision to make. So yeah, you're really, really fortunate. I talk to
Yeah.
lots of agents all the time.
You're right. I mean, and it's kind of funny. We still have challenges now that, we've grown the agency quite a bit, but you're 100% right. That was like one of the toughest hurdles to get over is to get to the point where you can not only afford to hire somebody, but then like it's a totally different skill set. I was, in my
Yeah,
mid
totally.
20s and had always worked for, well, actually I'd always worked in insurance basically for myself, but I'd never managed an employee. I didn't know how to set up any of the
Hmm.
tracking their time and what kind of benefits they should have and, all this
Right.
kind of stuff. It was not the stuff that I knew how to do. I knew how to sell policies. That was pretty much it.
Yeah. So you didn't start out with a customer service manual and here's how you do service. It's all in this book.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
read the
Yeah.
book and go sink or swim. You didn't
Yeah.
do it that way.
If somebody could write that book, they could make a mint. But I think
Oh,
people have tried,
yeah.
but there's not a one size fits all for that, I don't
No,
think.
no, there sure isn't. No. So, in Holley Insurance, how do you measure your size? Do you look at yourself when somebody says, "How big is your agency?" Do you say, "I've got X amount of premium dollars, I've got X amount of revenue, X amount of policy holders"? How do you, or maybe number of employees? How do you measure, or how do you share your size?
It really just depends on the person. I don't get hung up on it. It's one of those things that of course, we have different growth metrics that we look for, and we want premium volume to grow. We want revenue to grow. I look at, the hiring from, the team aspect of, what we need. And it's kind of funny you mentioned how, everybody says, well, you need to hire before you need to. And that is where we are now. I've actually got a job opening right now that I don't absolutely have to hire for, but I want to, sort of get ahead of it. So
Right.
it really depends on the person I'm having a conversation with. Some people will say the only way to do it is revenue, or the only
Right.
way to do it is this or that or the other. I don't really care. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I guess the simple answer is you probably need to know all of them. If
Well,
it's
as an owner,
premium,
you should, yeah, and you
right?
probably do, but you're humble enough to say, "I'm not going to go out." brag and throw numbers out there. How many employees do you have, for example?
We are at 8 in-house. We have two, well, we have one VA and another virtual employee that's stateside, and we're getting
Okay.
ready to hire another.
And the 8 in-house are in an office location?
Yeah, we have three offices so in
Okay.
our area. So we've got an office here in Rocky Mount. I'm actually in my home office right now. But Rocky Mount, Roanoke, and Forest, Virginia is where our locations are now. So they're scattered throughout those.
Is one office bigger than the others?
Yeah, the Rocky Mount office is kind of like the home base.
Home base.
Yeah, one, I guess it is the bigger office. It's also like sort of where it started, and it's also like walking distance to my house, so that helps.
Nice.
Um, I also own it, so we call that the Global Operations Center for Holley Insurance is in downtown Rocky Mount, Virginia.
And Rocky Mount is how many people? What's the population?
We're a little bit over 5,000, I think. We're small
Oh, okay.
town USA.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Do you
yeah.
remember what your very first Holley Insurance office looked like?
Oh yeah, I do. It did not look
It's
great.
not where it's at today. It was a different location, right?
Right. Yeah. We originally started in a even smaller town of Boones Mill, Virginia, with a population of about 200 people.
No
And
way.
yeah, I had an office that was attached to an attorney's office. And it was, you had one front room and then you walked directly into the office. That was it. And it was me, a desk, a couple of chairs that we bought at thrift stores and that sort of thing, and just
That's
I
what
had a
we all
phone that
do.
worked, and
Yeah,
that's what I needed.
that's right. So maybe a
Yeah.
couple hundred square feet was about all you had.
Yeah, that was about it. It was two small rooms. That's literally all we had. And
Mhm.
if there was a conference room that I could sort of walk from my office, that was actually the attorney's conference room. But if I needed it and they didn't need it, then I could use it. But at that point in time, all your it was desktop computers and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't like you could just pick up
No.
a tablet and go in there and make things happen.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
were you considered like a retail? You were with an attorney, but were you on the street, so to speak, or
Oh,
off?
oh yeah, yeah. No, we were on the street, we
Okay,
call it today shoe leather marketing. That's how we did it, just
gotcha.
burning the leather off the shoes.
Did you have a sign out front?
We did have a sign, and at the time, I really thought, man, that's going to make it or break it for us. When you're first starting in the
We
business, and
we all think people are gonna walk right in, don't we?
oh
When we
yeah,
first open our doors.
agonized over the
So
sign,
funny. Oh my
agonized over the
God,
sign,
yes. Yeah.
and
And
now
you
our
want to
two.
spend a ton of money.
Yeah, now the two satellite locations are in like an office park with very little signage, and hardly anybody comes in the office anymore or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
But no, at that point in time, I very proud, big sign, out front and all that kind of stuff.
So when COVID hit, 100% work from home from
Yes.
all of your locations, and then is it back to 100% prior as it was prior, or is some still remote?
Some things have changed. We were pretty lucky. I've always kind of been a techie agent to begin with. Like I had already before COVID, I had already sort of started going that way. So, all of our workstations are laptops. Nobody has a desktop. And I
Okay.
was in the process of that changeover just before, and I'd ordered the last two. We use Macs. Had the last two MacBooks ordered right before the COVID panic hit. And so everybody was already transitioned. We'd already had VoIP. We already had all that. So it was a pretty simple, smooth transition for us, honestly, to begin with. I've always kind of left it open for my team to work from home when they needed to. And so they always, they had kind of had a little bit of practice, some of them more than others because some of them didn't have great internet service and
Mm.
that sort of thing. But sort of organically, they wanted to come back. Like I didn't have to say, all right, we're coming back to the office now. Um, Everybody was, already ready to get back, I think, and most of my people prefer to work from the office. I work Mondays from home. I mean, that's my normal schedule. It helps me get a good start on the week and that sort of thing. I've got other team members that'll work from home a day here, a day there. Had one last week. Her husband had some pretty major dental stuff done, and she needed to be around for him, so she worked from home. So that's a little bit different than it was before COVID, but still everybody ends up coming back to the office once everything's, whatever they needed to be home for is over.
Right. And I imagine that's more common in smaller areas rather
Yeah,
than big city, which is, want to avoid the commute, but you do it because you have to.
right.
But in bigger city communities, it's probably more common to work remote than in smaller area like you. Um, so in our market today, those that are listening are probably going to know, especially if they're fellow agency owners, they're going to know we're in a hard market. Is this the hardest market you've ever seen?
Perhaps. I mean, I would compare it to 2000 when I started my agency. It was pretty hard then too, which honestly was an advantage for me as a new agent because, people were looking for insurance at that point in time.
Right,
It was a pretty big
right.
disruption for me. And just again, you say you don't know how lucky you were. I didn't know how lucky I was at that point in time because
Correct.
the hard market for a scratch agent was easy or easier. I shouldn't say it was easy because it definitely
Easier.
wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't, the problem is we haven't gotten to the end of this one yet. Like, I don't see
No.
the end of this one yet. So, if it gets much harder than this, it'll be unquestionably the hardest market I've seen.
So explain to our listeners when you say it's a hard market, what does hard market mean to you? Explain to them what that means, what you're
You
having to
know,
go through.
yeah, carrier access, rate increases, tightening of underwriting requirements, all of that kind of stuff that, it can gum up a deal is happening right now. And, the inflationary pressures that, people are seeing makes it even harder. Even if you've got somebody that you can write, it makes it a little bit more difficult to do things like, pricing their building coverage properly and, different things, or if it's personal lines, a homeowner's policy, figuring the correct replacement cost and all of those kinds of things to make sure that you're in line. Then once all that's done, your underwriters are going to be a little bit more nitpicky than they used to be because they've got pressures because all of them are operating at an underwriting loss on personal lines. Pretty much all of them are. So, they're tightening up on that sort of thing. And then at the end, once you present a premium, it's way higher than what people are used to. So to me, it's very challenging, but at the same time, it's an opportunity because if we play it better than everybody else, then we'll come out the other end with a lot more market share.
Right. So explain to folks that don't know, I think most do, especially if you're in personal lines, heavy on personal lines. So rate increases you mentioned. So it's not just your agency, right? It's all carriers pretty much.
Right.
It's across the board. So that stirs up the market. When I get a bill in the mail and it's bigger than what I'm used to, I'm calling around. I'm checking out other options. So does that mean your phone's ringing from new prospects who are with other carriers or agents, and they're saying, "Listen, I need your help because my rates are going crazy." So how's that conversation go?
Yeah, it's actually ringing from new prospects and it's also ringing from our clients. Because they're upset with us when theirs goes up. And honestly, once you're established and, we've been in business for 20 some years now and that sort of thing, that's the more important piece of it is, keeping your retention high even through that, which knock wood, we've been able to at this point. We're still running around, 93%, close to 93%, which is excellent for us
For sure.
in this market. But if you can do that, and then on the backside of it, you're able to handle all those prospects coming to you and calling, and you do a good job of taking care of them, then the opportunity to write new business is there. It's just, can you close the back door right now to make sure they're not running out just as fast as you're bringing them in the front?
Right, right. So it means just overall more work in a hard market than in other times, both for existing clientele and new prospects who do come looking.
Right.
So that was my next question. So you're also getting phone calls. Oh my gosh, Steve, I've been with you for 15 years and no claims. Why are my rates going up? This doesn't make any sense. And so, what's your general approach to those folks? Because we all have them.
We try to turn it away from just a premium conversation, and we try to make sure that it's not just, I think the knee jerk for most agents is, oh, well, let me reshop it. And we are independent agents and we've got other,
That's what they
carriers.
say too. That's what they ask you to do.
Yeah. And sometimes we do. I mean, eventually, sometimes you have to. I would say that 90% of the time they're with the carrier that they should be already, and that there's no reason for them to move. So we really try to change it from just a price approach to, hey, yeah, let's review your total account. Let's look at coverages. Let's look at deductibles. Let's look at, are you a monoline auto policy holder? We need to round that account out.
Right.
If you're not willing to bring us your home, then, maybe you ought to talk to the other guy and see if he wants your auto, if you really want the best deal. But this is the way that you should do it. We try to just turn it to a overall review. We really try to do the best job we can for the client, whether that's them staying with us or going elsewhere. But we don't want to turn them into just price sensitive shoppers 100% of the time and knee jerk say, yeah, let me reshop it and see what, XYZ company will do compared to this one for you. Because I don't want that call every year when their rate goes up.
Right. And it will happen. How many conversations I've had. What of all the things you buy, Mr. Client, what things do you know of that in the last 5, 10, 15, 25 years, the price has gone down?
Right,
Groceries, gasoline, rent, anything, everything.
right,
Nothing's going down. You're lucky if it's even coming close to staying stable, you know? But insurance is no different. And so my conversations are always, let's talk about what your premiums would pay for if and when you have a claim.
right,
The cost of repairing your car. Now you have a ton more electronics in your car than you ever have had. That stuff costs a bundle. Don't pop an airbag because that's going to be a few grand, you
right.
know, and they don't have any idea that that's what's part of it. So those folks that are working in body shops, they want to raise every now and then because they got to take care of their families. So the wages for labor on body repair shops, that's gone up. So it all just compounds, So
Well,
that's
plus think about the folks that are in that business. Think about the education and the skills and all that sort of thing. We always think about what we have to do with continuing education and different things like that. But think about the different skills that those guys have had to pick up. The guy that used to be a shade tree mechanic that, could work on things, those days are gone now. You
yeah.
almost have to be like a computer engineer to work in those. So those guys deserve to make a little bit more money. And really from the client's standpoint too, it's not always to their benefit to change, even if they can save money. That longevity means something. If you're,
Right.
certain age, or you've got, young kids that are about to come onto your policy, or you've got, this and that and the other, there might be reasons why, yeah, it's still worth it for you to pay a few $100 more, even though you could get a bit better deal elsewhere.
Yeah. It's a tough conversation because all they know is I know it fits in my budget right now. So don't rock the apple cart because, I don't really have more budget, just to arbitrarily pay more for insurance, in particular car insurance, because on personal lines, it's the most sensitive premium or item in their budget that they pay for. Probably
Right.
more than groceries, gasoline, utilities, that car insurance item. How many of your clients can tell you I pay 184.59 a month?
Oh
They
yeah.
all know the dollars and cents because
Yeah.
it's on set on auto pay. How much do you pay for home? I don't know. It goes through mortgage, so I don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
But boy, on the auto, they can tell you to the penny exactly what their auto pay is that month, and if it changes, they're calling you. You've had them. You ever get a
Oh,
call for three cents?
yeah. Oh,
Yep,
I
it's
remember years
happened.
ago, I had a client, he had a manila envelope, like a folder that he wrote down his premium every year. And I mean, it was just straight in a line, and he had like 7, 8 years of it right there. And he came to my office one time to talk about his increase. And I just happened to, be able to look across the table, and he was so upset because it had gone up so much last year and, all this kind of stuff. And I looked and I said, hey, I want you to look back at your note right there. What were you paying 5 years ago? And it was almost exactly the same amount of money that he was at that point in
Yeah.
time. And I was like, hey, yeah, they went up on you this year, but you've been saving for 4 years, and the argument was over. But you do have those clients that, they track it for you. And he kind of made my case for me. That was a good one.
They'll tell you how many pennies it actually went up
Oh
because
yeah.
some folks pay that close attention. It's actually crazy. It's crazy to us in the business, but I get it. You know, it's everybody's choice to monitor their household budget and see what fits and what doesn't. Some, especially folks who are on a fixed income, it's a tough deal. So I
Well,
get it. I get it.
I think it's important for us too in our business to kind of think about why that happens within our business. And what I mean by that is, we'll have discussions on IAOA about, there was one recently about writing state minimum, or what do you do with rate increases, or what do you do with non-pay cancellations and all that kind of stuff. And I would say that my agency is probably not getting hit as hard as some others right now, but it's because we select for preferred clientele, and most of our clients really want our counsel. Yeah, they don't want to pay a whole lot of money either. All of them want to save money and that sort of thing, but
Right.
they do value the relationship and they do value the advice. And even if it's not somebody that wants to do a review, which we offer everyone a review once a year, if they don't do that review every year, they know that we've looked at their account and they value that. So, we kind of do our marketing based on that sort of thing, and that's the kind of account that we're trying to capture. And if it's somebody that's not that, we're okay walking away from it, and we send them to other good agents that are set up to do that. It's not that the others are lesser business or not good business. There's really good agencies that are built on nothing but non-standard business, and they're very
Right.
profitable and they do a great job for their clients. But we're not built for that level of sensitivity and those kinds of activities that you have for it. So I
Right.
think the agency owners need to put a little bit of thought into that about who do we really want to write and who do we serve well, and if those two things don't line up, then you might want to rethink what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think you could give the same advice to newer agents,
Yes.
starting out or 5 years or less. Everybody says don't sell on price. Build your agency and educate your clientele of the value of uh, consultative selling,
Right.
not based solely on price. Because sure, you might have 10 or 15 or 20 carrier options. And so you're going to give them the best price because you want them to, become a client to begin with. But my advice is, and I'm sure you would give the same based on what you just mentioned there, is build on value.
Right.
And they have a hard time doing that. I get it. We all do when we're new, starting out. It's hard
Yep.
because especially when a price you got to beat, and you got to pick, something that's $5 a month less, just to get them to switch because they're so price sensitive. And
Right.
how do you do that, And so you got to sell on value so that when now that there is such a thing as a hard market like what we're in right now, I've been in this business 44 years, toughest market I've ever seen, and
Yeah.
mostly personal lines for me. And
Yeah.
this is the toughest of all my time in the industry. Now, it's going to vary by location. If you're in Virginia or if you're in Arizona and I'm from Iowa, if you're in those kind of states, but if you're in, it's more stable somewhat. But if you're in Florida or California or New York or Texas or areas where, right now, Florida, I don't know how they're doing business in
Yeah.
that
I don't
state.
either. Yeah. I
It's
talked to my
just
friends down there. I mean,
crazy.
it's as if they're in a different business than the rest of us are.
It
You
feels
know,
like it. Yeah.
it's total. Their challenges are totally different than what the rest of us are dealing with, and God bless them.
God bless them is right. I can't even have the same conversation with them as I do with you.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's
happen.
totally different. That's right.
Completely different animals. So it's depending on where you are, it's going to be critical. But sell on value. That's my advice to all new agents. I'd say 3 to 5 years or younger. If you're getting into this business, it's going to be a scramble. It's hard work, but in the captive world, it used to be philosophy that you could sell your butt off for 5 years, your first 5 years, and then could skate. You were on retirement mode, right? After 5 years, that's all it would take. And I think about that now, and I laugh, and that doesn't work. That doesn't
No, the
happen. But
challenges just change. That's I
for
mean,
sure.
there are some that, that you'd call the RIP, retire in place. They
Yep.
build a certain
Yep.
size book and then they're done and they just
They're
milk it
done.
and
Yep.
whatever. I'm not wired that way. If you're not growing, you're dying. And
Right.
so it's sort of like, I've never wanted to be that guy. And when I get to the point where I'm not comfortable doing it anymore, I'll get out. But
Hmm.
I think you're right. The challenges just change. It never gets to a point where you coast. I mean, I'm so much less. I had somebody call in today, and he was a direct referral from a friend of mine that I've known from high school, and he didn't want to talk to anybody else in my office until he talked to me first. And I talked to him, and he wanted us to quote his personal lines account. It's going to be a really nice personal lines account, but I had to tell him, I'm like, look, I'm the least qualified person here. I stole it from I think it's Grant Botma that gave me this line. And he said, I'm the least qualified person here to look at your home and your auto insurance right now. And
Right.
it's the truth because I don't do it, on a day to day anymore.
Right.
I have different challenges that I have to take care of. And I think it's what makes the business still exciting for me is that, if I were still just, banging out policies day after day, that wouldn't do it for me. Now, other agents, that's exactly where they get their joy, and that's what they want to do. So then they have to find somebody else to cover the other stuff for
I'm
them.
one of them. I love
Yeah,
selling.
yeah,
Work in your business versus working on your business, that whole philosophy. And I never bought into that because I want to be in my business. That's where I'm happy. That's
yeah,
where I feel like I do the best work. And so I love selling and I stay in in my agency selling. I love it. I'll hire other people to do the accounting and the
right.
employee stuff and all the other stuff that an owner would probably take on, but there's no one size shoe fits all. So that's part of being independent. You get to do it the way you want to. And
Right.
if it works, more power to you. More
Yeah,
power to you.
that's the beauty of
Yeah.
this business is that there's so many different ways to be successful in it,
Mhm.
and it's your kingdom. You get to kind of choose which way you want to try that, and if you succeed, then great. If you fail, at least you failed on your terms and you learned some lessons and you move
Yep.
you move forward. There's
Exactly. Yeah.
there's not a right or wrong way to do it, in my opinion.
Nope. Now, just a little bit ago, you mentioned, you might refer somebody if they need to an agency who is more of a specialist in high risk or,
hmm
something like that. So those folks work in different niches. Do you have any niches in your agency?
We don't. I really think that preferred market is sort of what I would define as the niche, which most people
Your
wouldn't
sweet
consider it
spot.
that. Yeah, I mean, we don't, go after one, we're not a market for roofers or we're not a market for, this or that. We're a market for a lot of them as long as they fit into that preferred risk. That's kind of what we're looking for is those, preferred risks that value the consultative approach that, all of that kind of stuff. I would say that's, we do have a lot of contractors that we insure on our commercial side. It just tends to come with the territory, and our carriers are strong there. But as far as one well-defined niche that we really jump into, we'll take good business where it is. Um, it's just never been, something that we've been successful at developing. But again, it's one of those things that you see some of these other agents out there that are doing it and killing it with those, particular niches, and it's like, man, that's a great way to make a living as well. So,
Sure, sure.
yeah.
But is it different in rural area versus the big city? Like, yeah, you might there's contractors in every walk of life in the U.S., but you may not have, for example, I don't know, a bunch of laundromats or a bunch of, that's a bad
We
example.
have one in
Uh,
town.
yeah, those are gone. That was a really bad example. What about retail or office or medical or anything like that? I mean, do you have less of that just because you're a smaller area, and
We've
so
got
it
a
doesn't
lot of
make
that.
sense?
Yeah, we've got a lot of that, but like, when we go out to Phoenix, nothing like, what you could go in a
Of
couple of
course.
blocks in Phoenix and have enough, more medical than we've got in a, three county area here, but
Right, right, right.
we've got enough of it here that all of those kinds of risks we have. I would say the size of those risks is much smaller. I mean, it's Main Street bop business that's going to be low premium, and a lot of it you can still do profitably, as long as you have your systems in place and all that. But as far as like going to downtown Rocky Mount and finding a Fortune 500 company, you're not doing that. So, and
Right, right,
even Roanoke is the big city here, and like that's 100,000 people metro area. That's not a huge city by any means either. But
right.
at the same time, I don't have the level of competition that you would probably see in Nashville, or that folks see in Tampa, or
Hmm.
Phoenix, or some of those things too. So I think the pie gets sliced differently, but you can still get a fair portion of it as long as you're doing things the right way.
Right. So you talked about, looking at maybe a semi-retirement move to Arizona. Any plans to maybe take your agency to another state?
Well, we already operate in North Carolina as well. It,
Okay.
it kind of started as a need for a client of ours. We would add states as we see it, but I don't have a desire to operate nationally or any of that. We still like to sort of have our fingers on the pulse of our clients and that sort of thing. If a business need arose for it, I mean, it's not terribly difficult to get licensed in other states, and we would do it. But
Right.
I just haven't had it. We've still got plenty of areas we can grow in Virginia and now North Carolina that I really haven't needed to.
Cool. So, okay. Well, that's enough about business. What about fun stuff? What's your number one hobby?
Golf. The cliche insurance thing is me. Golf.
Yep. And you're well, it's early in the season right now. It's probably for you too. So, but what's your typical handicap?
I'm carrying like a 13 right now, so
Okay.
I'm good enough to play with anybody and bad enough to play with anybody. I think I'm in kind of a sweet spot. I usually float between like a 10, 11. 13's a little high for me, but I'll get that down as the weather warms up.
As you start
Yeah,
practicing, getting out there a little more. Okay.
yeah,
So what's
yeah.
number two after golf? Now that your kids are all gone, you can't
Yeah,
swing
really travel.
kids parks.
My wife and I love traveling, and we go places. Whenever we get the opportunity, we took a trip to Europe. We actually took the kids with us on that one. Actually, I got to go to Pinehurst and play with my son a couple weeks
Very
ago.
cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
did that, and we're coming to Arizona here in a couple weeks. I know we've got a trip to Nashville planned. We've got, of course, Chicago will be going. Anytime we go to a city with a baseball stadium, we try to watch ball games. That's sort of our go-to thing. We love visiting other major league parks and that
Man
sort of thing.
after my own heart. So you see
Yeah,
this right here,
yeah, I
this
see it.
frame thing. Those are ball shapes of all the ballparks. My daughter gave this to me, and they're scratch offs. So you're supposed to scratch them off, and then you get the full view of the stadium after you've attended. So I'm at 17. This is Major League
Wow.
Ballparks. Yeah, I'm at 17. I got 13 more to go. Most of mine that I haven't been to are on the East Coast. And the closest one, or two of them that I haven't even been to yet, Atlanta and Cincinnati, are within 3 or 4 hour drives, and I still need to get them. I'll probably get them this summer. I have one in California left. I have not been to Oakland, but I've been to all the others in California, everything else out west. So yeah, that's because I'm a huge baseball fan. It's my number one
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah,
So that's
you're
that.
gonna like that Atlanta stadium. The new
Thank
Braves stadium
you.
is really cool. They got a
Yeah.
nice little city around it and all that. I mean, it's a great place to hang out. I'm a Mets fan, so they're in our division, and I'd love
Okay.
for them to lose a bunch of ball games, but I can't hate on their
Mhm.
stadium. Their baseball stadium's awesome.
Is it? That's another one I haven't been to. I've been to the new Yankee Stadium, but not the Mets. So I've
Yeah,
been to Atlanta's old state, the Peach Bowl, the old Peach Bowl, but that was for a college football game
yeah,
years ago. But I
yeah,
haven't been to the new stadium for baseball. So,
yeah.
but I plan to hit all 13 remaining ones at some point. I don't have like a time frame or a tour. I did an IAOA one at Dodger Stadium when there was like five of us, insurance folks went.
That's
I
great.
don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and that
Yeah,
was fun. Yeah. So, Nashville doesn't have major league, but not too far away, Cincinnati and Atlanta, both of those
Right.
I gotta hit up. So, tell me, what is your number one app that you use on your cell phone right now?
Probably most used is going to be Facebook, because that's
Okay.
sort of the one that I'm on the most. As far as the one that I like to use the most is my golf shot app, because that means I'm on the golf course and it's tracking all of my shots and my handicap for me and all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. But
Is
that
that
would be my
also
favorite one.
a distance seeker? Tell you how far out you are, and it'll do all of that.
Yeah, yeah, it's got the
Really?
GPS on it. It
Oh
counts,
yeah.
how often you've hit the fairway versus not, how many putts in a
Oh,
round, how successful you've been at getting up and down out of sand traps, and all this kind of stuff that's really neat. So that's probably my favorite one to use.
what's the name of that one?
Golf shot.
Golf shot. Huh.
Yeah, it's
And it's
relatively
probably free.
inexpensive too. It's like
Oh, there
40
is a
bucks a
cost.
year, 50 bucks. Well, there's a
Okay.
free version that you can try,
That
I
doesn't
believe,
do
but
as much. Yeah.
yeah, if you want to get your handicap stuff, done and all that, you pay a couple of bucks a year for it to do it. So I like that one.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, other than you said Chicago, uh, Phoenix, uh, Nashville, that was a personal family thing. Any big trips planned, like abroad or anything on the calendar?
Actually, one of my son's best friends has invited us to go to play St. Andrews with them next year. So that one's
No
getting
way.
on the calendar. That's bucket list stuff right there. So
That is.
definitely looking forward to that.
Do you know how that works? I mean, how do you get on their calendar to play? Or you just fly, buy a ticket, fly over there, and like, okay, when can I get on?
No, this kid is setting up like a package deal. We'll be playing other courses in the area and that sort of thing as
Okay.
well. But it's basically a golf package where we're playing that one and some other amazing courses, but nothing to me outshines St. Andrews. That's the
Right.
motherland. Yeah.
Have you ever been to the Masters just to
I have
watch?
not. I make a post for people that follow me on Facebook about every year for over 20 years now. Facebook's or the Masters is a tradition unlike any other. That's what they say
Right,
on the
right.
the promos and
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Well, my
Yep.
tradition, unlike any other, is not making the lottery for tickets for the Masters. And so every year when I get my declination notice that hey, you didn't get tickets again this year, I'll post it and put a tradition unlike any other.
How long have you been on the list?
At least 20 years. At
No
least.
way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that long?
It's that difficult. It's all a lottery, so it's depending on how many people put in, for tickets and
That's
how
crazy.
many they have available and that sort of thing. So it's incredibly difficult. I mean, of course, I could, if I wanted to, I could get some on the secondary market, and you're going to pay through the nose for it, but that's no
Right,
different than anything else nowadays.
right.
But I'll get them one day, and I'll go. That one's definitely going to
Because
happen
aren't
at
they
some
given
point.
like 100,000, 100,000 fans on a golf course is not a ton. It's a
No.
lot, but it's not like unreasonable. And
Yeah.
even with that many on a golf course for a 4-day tournament or even five, you can't get a ticket to it
Yeah.
through
No, you
normal
can't get
means.
them. Can't get them.
That I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's crazy stuff.
Now we did
Huh.
go to the Waste Management Phoenix Open, not this year, but the year before. That one had like 700,000 fans
Yeah,
throughout the
it's
weekend.
nuts. I've
That's
been many
ridiculous.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was lucky enough to go on carrier sponsorships and sit in the suites on 16. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's like no other.
Oh, it's
It's
crazy.
just
Yeah.
it's if people don't know, you golf fans, you don't know. 16 is the one where they are screaming. The fans are screaming the entire time except where a golfer steps up to address his ball. As soon as that swing and that club makes contact, they are hollering, hooping, and until the ball lands, and then it's like, whoosh, and if it's a great shot, I've never been when there's been a hole in one, but if it's a really great shot, because it's a tough hole, it's not
Yeah.
easy. But if
Yeah.
somebody sticks it, oh my gosh, the place erupts. And
Yeah.
this is golf where you're supposed to be quiet, right?
Well,
not
it's
say
kind
a
of funny.
word.
When
It's a
we
whole
went,
different
I looked at my
atmosphere.
buddies. I was like, this is just a party where golf happens to be going on.
That's it. It's not
It's
golf
more a party
tournament.
than anything.
That's exactly right. It's a party before it is a golf tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the way it's been for as long as I've known. I lived in Arizona 13 years. It's been that way way before that. I don't know
Yeah,
how it came about, the history of it, but it's a zoo. It really
yeah.
is.
It's a great
So,
time.
no, totally. Now you're close enough to hit some nice tracks in North Carolina.
Oh yeah.
Hilton Head and down in there. You ever been down in those places?
Well, yeah, like I said, I played Pinehurst #2 a couple weeks ago
Right,
with my
right,
son. That was great.
right.
We played, the Pinehurst area has a lot of great courses. The Women's US Open was just played at Pine Needles down there. I've played that course. The US Open comes to Pinehurst again next year, and to #2,
Cool, cool.
and that thing's incredibly difficult. Gives you a whole different perspective on what those guys do when you
Right,
play it. But
right.
then we can drive to Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach is really sort of the golf haven, on this side too, because there's
Yep.
a lot of great golf courses down there as well.
Cool. Last
Yeah.
final question for you. What's for dinner tonight?
I think the wife's got a roast going right now. I'm smelling something right now coming, and I think that's what's going on. So I'm hopeful that that's what we're having.
So how's it work in your house? She cooks, you clean up?
Fortunately, my wife generally does both. Since this is being recorded,
An
I
honest
can't.
man.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that I do both, but I definitely thank her for doing it, and I appreciate it.
That's hilarious. Well, I
So,
appreciate it. You're a good friend of mine, and we've been known each other for some time. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing, your business acumen and your personal life with our listeners. I'm sure they appreciate it too. And we'll be in touch, and we'll see you somewhere down the road soon.
all right,
Thanks a lot,
thanks,
Steve.
Captain. Appreciate it.
You bet. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to COLLABCAST with IAOA with Captain Dave Jackson. Production and distribution by podsquad.fm, riverside.fm, and Spotify for podcasters. Special thanks to Little Dog Social Media, Terry Champion, and all our guests and listeners. If you're an independent insurance agency owner, please subscribe to our podcast weekly. You can also request to join our agency owner exclusive Facebook group, IAOA, or Insurance Agency Owners Alliance at IAOA.com. Captain Dave Jackson signs out from sunny Hendersonville, Tennessee.